We're in the Rogers Room of the Millicent Library. This was the second building given to the town by Henry Huddleston Rogers. It came about due to the death of one of his children. Henry and Abby Rogers had 5 children. They were Anne, Cara, May, Millicent, and Henry Huddleston Rogers, Jr. Millicent, as she grew older, became a sickly child. She suffered from heart problems. And about 5 years after the opening of Rogers School, in August of 1890, young Millicent died at the age of 17. The next year, her father decided to build a memorial in memory of Millicent as a gift from her parents and her siblings. The Millicent Library cornerstone was laid in 1891, and the library itself opened on January 30th, 1893, which would have been Millicent's 20th birthday had she lived. Mark Twain, when he saw the Millicent Library, called it the ideal library. He said, "Books are the liberated spirits of men and should be bestowed in a heaven of light and grace and harmonious color and sumptuous comfort like this." This was very different from a typical 19th century library, which if your town was lucky enough to even have a library, it would probably be a dark, dusty room with moldy old books in it. This was created as a wondrous palace to glorify poetry and literature. Millicent loved poetry. There's a memorial window, beautiful stained glass window by Clayton and Bell of London. And in the center of the window is a portrait of young Millicent. She has a halo and angelic wings, but we're not in a church, we're in a library, so she's not portraying an angel in the window, she's portraying the muse of poetry. The architect of the building, Charles Brigham from Watertown, selected an Italian Renaissance style for the building, with red tile roof and buff-colored terracotta work. The terracotta has symbols of all of the arts, music, literature, poetry. This building was meant to glorify reading and the arts, and inside and out there are symbols of literature and poetry. The building inside was originally painted somewhat darker than we see it today. In the 1980s, the walls were lightened and the stencil work was redone. On the second floor, there's a small patch of the original wall coloring and stenciling so that you can see the detail that went into the decoration of this building. There are 4 fireplaces in the building, each one of a completely different design. They were used originally, and there are stories in the newspapers of events being held in the library where children sat in front of the fireplaces and heard Christmas stories or other books being read to them. Today, the fireplaces are no longer used. One interesting thing to see in the library is the original framed manuscript from Mark Twain's speech at the dedication of the town hall. He spoke about Henry and Abby Rogers' gift to the town, and then he crossed the street and visited the library. Later on, Twain gave the trustees of the Millicent Library a complete autographed set of his books, and he sent along with them a note that said, "They're not very instructive, but I feel sure you'll like the bindings." Those books are now kept locked in the director's office. The Millicent Library also has many artifacts from Japan, because for many years this was the headquarters of the Fairhaven Toshishimitsu Sister City Committee. Manjiro Nakahama, the first Japanese person to live in America, is memorialized in displays here at the Millicent Library. And there are many gifts of Japanese tapestries and things that have been sent from Japan to Fairhaven over the years because of the friendship between Manjiro and Captain Whitfield, who rescued him in 1841. In 1968, an addition was built on the Millicent Library in the back. It extended the building outward. It provided a garage for the bookmobile, and it also provided office space and a climate-controlled room where art could be stored. When Rogers gave us the Millicent Library, he didn't just present us with a building and say, okay, here's a library, now you have to take care of it. There was a very interesting way he set up funding for the library. In 1893, Henry founded the private Fairhaven Water Company. He gave all of the stock for the water company to the trustees of the Millicent Library. And from 1893 until 1968, when we paid our Fairhaven water bill, we were funding the Millicent Library's operation. In 1968, the town took over the water company, made it part of the Public Water Department, and the state set up a special legislation which required us to fund the library because we had taken away its original source of revenue. Today, the Millicent Library is still a very important part of our community. There are many programs that take place here for young people as well as adults. There are children's story times, teenage groups meet here, and there are book clubs for adults as well. You may visit the library, take out one of the thousands of books, visit the archives and look up Fairhaven history, and through the library's website, you can access information from around the world.